Study by researchers at the University of Iceland says avoiding caffeine completely could be best. Andrew Shennan is Professor of Obstetrics at King's College London. And Andrew, when we talk about something as common as caffeine, it's quite an emotive subject, really, because it's part of everyone's lives. And now are we thinking that the current guidelines are wrong and that, pregnant women should be worried if they're drinking coffee or tea?
Sure. I mean, you can imagine that this is such a common thing, isn't it? Having tea, coffee, and caffeine's found in lots of things, nuts, beans. It's been in our diet for an awful long time. So, yes, so you can imagine people would be quite scared if they get a report like this. I've had a good close look at this report, and I don't think there is too much to worry about. We do know that taking an excess amount of caffeine can harm a baby, and the current advice is not to be excessive. But I think the controversy here is about the lower doses. So if you're talking about 200 milligrams, and what that means in practice is sort of a couple of cups of coffee or equivalent, the suggestion in this report was that might be harmful. Actually, there's no new evidence in this. This is the same evidence that the NHS and other people have looked at and come to the conclusion that there isn't strong evidence to support harm at these very low doses. And I think the problem is that the evidence in there is a little bit variable. It's based on people recalling stuff when they may underestimate what they actually have taken. So low doses look harmful. And there are sort of confounders and things. So that what we mean by that, if women who take a lot of coffee, they also smoke cigarettes, and those are the things causing the harm. And when you look at all this evidence and the stuff that gets published and people get excited about is often the positive stuff, so there's bias between reporting things that are over-egging it a bit. So when we've looked at this carefully, I wouldn't be so worried. It's always a bit alarming. I think the actual chance of risk is very small if it exists at all, and I can't see the big organisations suddenly changing their what they're recommending based on this report.
That's the thing, though, isn't it? When you read a headline like that or a section of a story, it does get you worried. How much caffeine is safe for pregnant women then?
So most of the big organisations will say it's okay to take some, and of course you may not know you're taking it if it's in certain substances, but a guide would be, 2 average cups of coffee would take you up to what is the recommended amount. Some of the very strong cups you might get when you're out at a coffee shop might be higher, and you can always ask. So the magical number is 200 milligrams, which you can always look up. But I think, on those modest doses, like many, many things in our diet, are usually pretty safe when you're pregnant. There are many things in our diet if you take them in excess, they become harmful when you're pregnant. So it's like everything in life. Moderation is key, and I wouldn't be too alarmed about harming your baby if you're only doing a little bit.
Do studies like this, though, even if the reliability of the data is questionable, does it start to make people think that we should be re-evaluating and starting new studies and looking for new evidence?
Yes, I mean, you can always get new evidence. I think there are different standards of data and how it's collected. And the problem with these reports is there are many, many what we call retrospective and observational reports. The real sort of quality stuff is when you do studies which are called randomized trials, where you actually give people the thing you're worrying about and not give them and compare them directly. And unfortunately, those studies just haven't happened. So in an ideal situation, you'd want to randomize people to taking caffeine and not taking caffeine. But the practice is that's very difficult because it's so common in our diet, and people don't want to withhold from it. So yes, more evidence is always needed. But as things stand, I wouldn't be too alarmed about taking a little bit of caffeine.
Andrew, good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Andrew Shennan, Professor of Obstetrics at King's